Hello, my name is Nancy Sarah and I'm your host for the Book Talk. Today we have a very special guest. Her name is Linda Buckley Archer. She's the new famous author of the Gideon trilogy. She's here to discuss her very first book called The Time Traveler. So please help me welcome Linda Buckley Archer.
Hi everyone. Thank you for having me on your show, Nancy. This is my very first interview for my new novel.
You're always welcome on my show, isn't that right? So Linda, what inspired you to write this novel? Why did you write this novel?
Well, I wanted to write a book, first of all. And it's easier to start a book than finish it. Well, the historian, Lucy Moore, she was broadcasting on a radio. She was talking about 18th century, like the criminal London. And by the end of the radio, I had the Gideon the Cutpurse in like broad brushstrokes.
So tell us about the main characters in the novel.
Well, there are four main characters in the novel. Firstly, there's Gideon Seymour. He is a very, very skilled thief, but he's also a very good gentleman. Secondly, there is Peter Schkock. He is very independent. He doesn't really know, he doesn't really have a father figure because his dad puts his work before him. And he's also very attached to Gideon. And then thirdly, there's Kate Dyer. She's very sensitive, but she's also very hopeful. And lastly, she is very, very clever. She's also very attached to Peter because she has a very big family, so she's used to having people around her. So she becomes very attached to Peter. But by the end of the novel, she learns to become more independent. And then lastly, there is the Tar Man. Now personally, he is one of my favorite characters. He is a very sly thief. He's also very cunning and very clever. He is also from the 18th century, by the way.
What is the setting of the novel?
Well, there's two settings. First of all, there's the 21st century, and this starts off in Dovedale, which is like the countryside. And then there's also, of course, 1763, which is the 18th century. And that starts off in Dovedale, which leads to Bakewell, and then also leads to London, and lastly leads to Tyburn.
What are the two main conflicts in the Time Travelers?
Well, the first main conflict is between the Tar Man versus Kate and Peter. So, Kate and Peter have landed in the 18th century, my bad. I'm so excited, oh my gosh. They have landed in the 18th century because of this anti-gravity machine. So the Tar Man happened to be in the scene during their falling into the 18th century. So he becomes very curious about this anti-gravity machine. So he basically steals it while they're unconscious, and he runs away with it. So Kate and Peter have to race across London to try and get the machine while making new friends and new enemies. So the second main conflict is between Dr. Dyer and Kate, which is Kate's dad, and Inspector Wheeler. This happens in the 21st century. Okay, so Dr. Dyer and Inspector Wheeler are both trying to figure out what happened to the children. But Dr. Dyer knows more about what happened than Inspector Wheeler. So he wants to tell his wife and Peter's parents what happened, but NASA, who funded the anti-gravity project, won't allow him to because the information must stay confidential. So Inspector Wheeler is furious about why they can't tell him. So he tries to get the information out of them in a variety of different ways.
Wow, you put a lot of thought into this book. What is the major theme in the novel?
Well, personally, I think the major theme in this novel is good and evil. Because, for example, there's the Tar Man and then there's Peter and Kate. You know, Tar Man, basically, it's the sort of same thing with the conflict because the Tar Man is, how he steals the machine. So he's sort of on the evil side because he stole the machine for them, and Kate and Peter are on the good side, so they basically have to chase him down around London.
In your own words, can you explain to the viewers what is the plot exactly?
Well, there are two main plots in this novel. The first main plot takes place in the 18th century, which is to be 1763, and the second main plot takes place in the 21st century. So Kate and Peter arrive in 1763, and the Tar Man takes off with the anti-gravity machine. So the children must face new challenges and obstacles as they race through London to catch up with the Tar Man and reclaim the machine. Okay, So the second main plot takes place in the 21st century. So Dr. Dyer, NASA, Miss Dyer, Inspector Wheeler, and Peter's parents are all trying to figure out what happened to the children. So Dr. Dyer and NASA know more about what happened to the children. So Inspector Wheeler is investigating the children's disappearance. So he wants to know what happened to them. So he's furious at NASA and Dr. Dyer. So he tries to figure out what happened through a variety of different ways.
So, my final question for you today is, what is the climax of the story?
Well, the climax in The Time Travelers is when Gideon and the Tarman have to race on horseback. So the first person to reach the finish line reclaims the anti-gravity machine. So of course, Gideon wins, but there's a twist. So when Gideon wins and they check to reclaim the machine, it's gone. It just vanishes. So everyone is just shocked because the place where it was, it's a little building, it was all locked up before the race. And the tarman couldn't have taken it because he didn't know the location of the machine until the race started. So no one knows where it is and no one knows what happened.
Well, this has been a very interesting interview, and I hope to interview for your next book.
Well, thank you. I will be back because your show has the best audience I've ever seen.
Well, thank you. Let's give another round of applause for Linda Buckley Archer, everyone.
Thank you.